Yep.
Hi.
No, no,
Brothers.
let's,
He steps in.
that's what you're doing. I guess.
The
I don't
answer is you
understand
really
what
want to
that means.
see. I want to see. Yeah, of course I want to see. Oh.
Okay, we're still waiting for Anne. Does anyone know if Anne's coming in person or not? Okay. Well, it's 9:59, so we're still gonna wait another minute or two. And we are live right now, just so everyone knows.
Yeah. Max. Yes. Okay.
Manage a little bit. He has on the phone an hour ago.
We're waiting for one more committee member to arrive, so I'm gonna wait another minute. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the November 14th meeting of the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. This is our first meeting that we've met since all the applications have come in and everything has been scored and sorted, and we're going to begin our process to sort down through the applications and begin recommending what we're going to bring to the full legislature. This is the first of 3 meetings that we've scheduled for this. Each of those meetings is 3 hours, so that's 9 hours we've allocated for this. It may require more time, and we'll get to that, but that's where we're starting with. Committee member Deborah Dawson could not be here today. She had a big life event, a good one, today, so she just could not be here with us, but she'll join us for the rest of the meetings. We are joined by Mochi the dog. So if you see a dog scooting around in the background, Mochi does not get a vote, I believe. Okay. And I wanted to mention that the minutes for this meeting are going to be action-only minutes, just like we do for the expanded budget committee, which means we're not going to ask the clerks to try to capture all the discussion that happens. However, if there is something that you would like to be put into the minutes and put on the record, you are free to do so. Please ask. In fact, I will be asking some of my remarks in a few minutes to be included in the minutes. But I just wanted everyone to understand that. So I have some remarks that I've written out that I would like to read, and there will be some discussion about that afterwards. I'm sure it has to do mostly with the process of how we're going to move forward. And then MRB Group has some introductory material for us as well. So we have quite a bit to do before we actually get to the first application, and let's see how that goes. So before I dive in with my prepared remarks, are there any questions or comments? All right. Okay, we have received a very large response to our offer to the community to submit proposals for the county to distribute some of the American Rescue Plan funds that we received from the federal government. We ended up with 211 eligible applications asking for more than $32 million. We have approximately $6.5 million to distribute. That means literally that we must say no to 80% of the requests. It also means that we have 211 decisions to make and possibly 211 votes. I was reminded recently by one of my colleagues, gleefully, that I had advocated strongly for following the over-target request model we use in the county budget process when it comes time to vote on these grants. That means that the legislators get an up or down vote on each proposal. I still feel that way. However, given the number of applications we have, I am open to modifications of that process. In our OTR process this year, we handled about 30 over-target requests in 6 hours. That's an average of 12 minutes per vote. At that rate, voting on all these grant applications would take 42 hours. I think it's safe to say that no one wants something like that looks anything like that. We have allotted ourselves 9 hours for this process. That would come to an average of about 2.5 minutes per vote. We very well may have to schedule more time to work through all this, but we don't want to schedule a lot more time. So therefore, I feel there are some things we need to do. The first thing that we need to do is to say no a lot and quickly. Let's all agree here and now that there are many worthy causes and projects that we will be saying no to. No does not mean the application is bad. Let's also all agree here and now that all the projects are worthy. Otherwise, they would not have made it this far. Let's also agree that we don't feel good about saying no to a worthy project. So I'm going to pause actually and ask for a quick straw poll. Please raise your hand if you agree that these are great proposals, that we thank everyone for applying, that we wish we could fund everything, and that we feel bad having to say no to worthy causes. Could you please raise your hand if you agree with those statements? Thank you. Please let the record show that all committee members agreed with these statements. Therefore, no one needs to say any of those statements again on any individual vote. They apply in advance to each and every vote. I feel we must keep our speeches to a minimum. This speech was the exception. If you want to say a sentence or two of why you support something or not something else, you are of course entitled to. Please try not to say more than 2 sentences about any project. It's also completely okay to say 0 sentences about any of these projects. I personally am going to do my best to say 0 sentences about why I am voting for or against any individual projects. To put it another way, I am suggesting a no debate procedure as we vote. Or to put it even another way, my intention is to try to not convince anyone to vote one way or the other. I'm just going to be voting for myself. The difference between the process we are about to begin and the over-target request process is that we have set a dollar figure limit on this set of funds. We may easily accumulate more than $6.5 million worth of approvals as we move through this process. Therefore, be ready to have a second round of voting after we go through everything once. This is another reason why we need to be somewhat ruthless as we vote no. Remember, in the end, we must say no to 80% of these requests. That is the job we signed up for, and the sooner each of us embraces that, the easier this process is going to be. I suspect that there will be a lot of questions about various applications. I have been building up some questions myself. I'm going to ask that we don't try to answer these questions about individual applications on the floor during our meeting times. I suggest instead that we simply say that we have a question about a particular application and that we immediately set that application aside temporarily. We will try to answer these questions outside of committee time and then bring the answers back during our next meeting. This may not be ideal, but we have to face the practical issue that we must move swiftly through the voting process so that we don't end up taking 42 hours to finish. And I just want to say, when I'm suggesting that, I don't mean like, you know, a 1-second answer. I mean, like, I have some questions about where this funding came from or what their intention is and what their 10-year plan is, those kinds of questions that are going to be hard to answer quickly in the meeting. One more thing. There's something else that I think could slow us down if we're not careful, and that is the partial funding of projects. So we have the choice for any individual project of funding it completely or funding it partially. I would, and I feel like if we debate that, that's going to take a long time to sort through. So I'm going to suggest that another category that we can sort our applications into is potential partial fundings. Personally, I prefer an all or nothing approach for most of the applications, but I am thinking about a few possible exceptions where I could see why I might want to fund part of it and not another. So in that case, I would vote yes, and then if we received a majority of yes votes, I would then ask that it be put in a pile of partial fundings, and that those applications would receive an extra level of review later on and discussion later on, and a specific vote on whether to fund them partially or fully. So a quick review of what I'm suggesting, and then in a minute, we're going to hear other ideas, is that we're going to do yeses or nos, but that the other categories would be questions, and the other category would be partial funding, and we would sort into those categories to start out. I know that other people have ideas about how we should proceed. Some of us have had very spirited debate about how to proceed from here. So if someone would like to suggest something other than a fast first sorting of applications by an up or down vote on each one, now would be a great time to speak up. Ann.
As it's set in our procedures, the next step is for us to review and adjust the scoring. It's set in our procedures a couple of times. That was information that was given to the community. So I would like us to talk about whether we agree that that's the next step.
Can you say a little more about how you imagine what you're describing would occur?
I'm not sure how to do that, actually. I heard some email, someone just suggest that in the prior program priorities in that scoring section let me pull that up, that would be the place there where we might have the legislature might have the most wiggle room in that 25 points. So that's one idea, is that we rescore the applications with that.
So Ann, are you suggesting that in a committee meeting, we go through each application and each one of us suggests a score?
To do that in a committee?
Yeah, I'm
Or
asking.
go through each one?
I'm asking, is that
I'm not sure how to do that, but I'm just want to refer to, that's what's let's see. I mean, that's just what's in there many times. It says, in the program implementation on page 9 of the procedure of our policy for this is at the bottom, it says the legislative committee will review all of the applications and preliminary scoring and then make any scoring adjustments as deemed necessary and appropriate by the committee. So I'm not sure how to do this. It would have, of course, been much easier with fewer, but we have 211 applications. So I'm not sure how to do that, but that's what it says the next step is.
I guess before I pass on, I just want to point out, it does say as appropriate, and it doesn't require us to do that, right? It says we can if we want.
It says the legislative committee will review all the applications and preliminary scoring, then make any scoring adjustments as deemed necessary and appropriate by the committee.
Yeah. So it gives you the right to do it, but it doesn't mandate us to, I personally don't feel it's as appropriate for myself. I don't feel the need to score things, but it doesn't say the committee must score things. Okay, Veronica, then Shauna.
Thank you. So I would maybe suggest a compromise between what you both said since we have to say no to 80% of the applications. I don't actually think even though I think I may be contradicting an email that I sent, just for the public, a bunch of us have weighed in but not concluded anything by email over the weekend about the process. I don't think we need to go and assign a final score to every single application. But I think that decisions of whether to fund something or not should be grounded in scoring, because the scoring criteria is what was given to the public, is what was reemphasized to the public by MRB group, is what we spent a lot of time determining. So I wonder if we could do something like a yes, no vote through everything, where I think if I'm understanding you right, Dan, a yes would be funding it either fully or partially, and then we can loop back, and just a no is not funding it at all. And anything that gets voted no, don't fund it at all, either majority or universally, I'm not sure, but one of those would just, we thank the applicant and we don't visit that again. And then anything that we're the committee is not unified on, then maybe we can discuss adjusting the score. I think just for those watching, what we, the committee members, have now is that scores from MRB group, according to what was, the priorities that have been publicized. And of course, we could change any of the numbers, the 25 points for the program priorities and the other, I don't remember how, can't add on the fly, other points available. I personally, as I was looking through the applications, things like the number of employees and prior relief funding, I just looked at the MRB number and carried on and didn't try reevaluate that. And the program priorities, I took more time and attention to be do I agree with this? I'm guessing maybe others did the same. So that's all.
Shauna.
Yeah, I like the idea of us doing a yes, no, or even a maybe. And maybe if we're thinking it's a maybe vote, we go ahead and vote yes, just to simplify things. Another thing that I kind of had in the back of my mind was that we could get the spreadsheets broken up by the 3 different buckets, and then each legislator on the committee could provide the top 20 and do some type of weighted system. So we're not actually scoring, but we're kind of scoring, because if we were to, go through the rubric and answer the questions that the legislators have, we probably would come up with our top 20. And then MRB could be the one that actually provides us with the top 20 and we go from there. But I think we definitely have to get to the point where, I don't remember, for our top bucket of money, I think we have 16. Maybe we go from 16 to 10 or 16 to 8, so that we kind of lessen the pot a little bit and then have discussion around the top 8. And we'd end in the same place if we did a yes, no too. So.
Other thoughts? Joan?
Let Lee go first.
I wasn't sure if your hand was going up there.
It did, but.
Okay.
Oh,
That was kind of one
Hi,
of those,
Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
kind of where that's went, Veronica, to Shauna. And I was kind of thinking the same thing when you started, a yes, no, maybe. And a definite yes, definite no, and then a indefinite maybe. But if you've got that third category, at least we take the time to review it and do that scoring adjustment if necessary under limited parameters. The other thing is that I would hope that it could, by taking it to that point of discussion, maintain at least a foothold there or priority, so that, just because it got shifted on this first round, it doesn't kick it to the bottom of the list. It may very well be that it has a higher priority in the minds of the committee than maybe what the initial review was.
Thank you. Mike, oh, sorry, Joan. Yep. Joan, then Michael.
I wanted to at least make you aware that there are 14 applications that are going to be subject to an environmental review under seeker. And so I would say at this point, hopefully you're only taking tentative action on those. And we are working on those environmental reviews, and for at least a couple, we will be recommending specific mitigation measures. And so you should be aware of those as well when you make your final decision. Don't know how you want to do that. Maybe as you are discussing it, I will just raise my hand and say, this is under environmental review, and just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jonah. Yeah, I tried to think too, when this comes into the process, and I'm not sure. I'm definitely open to suggestions, but if however we end up deciding to proceed, if something is eliminated early on and it happens to be one of those secret ones, then it just saved you some work. So that might solve some of it, or that might sort some of it out. Yeah, and yes, I totally agree too. Before the final, we definitely need to know the seeker status. So feel free to jump in whenever you think it's important for us to know those, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Sure, thank you. One of the things that we as MRB group.
Michael, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Uh-oh.
Don't seem to be muted, but we can't hear you. Give us a sec. It might be something on our end.
Okay.
I'm assuming you can hear us, all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, stand by.
Okay.
1 second. I'm going to give this a try.
Can you try speaking again?
Yes. Can you hear me?
No, not yet. Stand by.
Dominic, is it something upstairs? Because I have the volume turned up down here.
It's possible. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that means it's on our end.
Yeah, we can hear him on the computer, so it's got to be on your end.
Yeah,
Well, he can't hear me say that.
I can hear you. Yeah. I could do a little song just to keep going here.
Well, I'll tell you what, while we're working on the sound issue, we have a live person that would like to speak. Ann?
Not that you're not live there, but so one of the questions, I have a question regarding transparency. I'd like someone to answer at some point. And we had said that let's see, or I guess it was in the FAQs that we would make available to the public the scoring. And just want to point out too, that we only received the scoring for the lower two tranches this morning. That was, I guess it was emailed to Dan late Friday, which I'm also not often looking at my work email on the weekend. So that was only emailed to us almost 10 o'clock last night. And so I haven't had a chance to look at it at all, which will something to think about as far as our meeting tomorrow, what we're going to do. I would need more time before even thinking about the two lower ones. So in the FAQs, it said the scoring that is provided to and discussed by the legislature committee and legislature will be part of the public record. So I'm just wondering, at what point do we want to release this scoring? Do we want to have the things that we're reviewing? And I'm just not saying we should at this, I'm just want to make sure we talk about that. Should those things that we're, what things do we want to include in the agenda packets to make, or in some way to make public, to have more transparency of what we're reviewing? Because this is saying the scoring, again, the scoring that is provided and discussed by the committee will be part of the public record, not what we're done with. And the other thing I wanted to say was that what I did suggest via email, if as a compromise to the yes, no, is if we wanted to go through, and I'm only prepared to do maybe by tomorrow, if we decide that, is to go through at the highest tranche, to have time to look at it again, if we proceed with that, is to go, yes, no, do we agree with what MRB said versus yes, no funding? Because I just feel that's, again, that's going to focusing on the scoring, not skipping our part of that, but kind of going from there and then seeing if we want to move things up or down. And maybe for those that we don't agree with the scoring, that we would then look at, would we give it a different score and then figure out how to do that? To me, that feels more fair.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat that last part. I did not understand what you're suggesting for the process.
So that I said that I believe in an email, but maybe I didn't say it quite the same way, is that if we were, to have a compromise, because I'm hearing some people want to do a yes, no and try and speed it up, efficiency, which we need to figure out some efficiencies. Yes, I totally concur. So I thank you for trying to help us figure this out, Dan, is that we could go through, and again, I'd only be prepared to do maybe tomorrow to do the highest tranche, if that's what we're going to do, to go that we each say yes or no, whether we agree with MRB's score, whether we want to keep it like that. We don't want to change it.
That's
So
what
that
you
would
said.
be a yes. And then a no would be, we don't agree with their score. And then those would be up for, moving up and down. So hoping that, see where we come there.
You see, I want to be clear, I understand. You're suggesting that we vote on whether we agree with the MRB score.
For each one, right?
Wouldn't that automatically then require a 211 extra votes? Because then we'd have.
I don't know about extra,
But we
but
still have to vote yes or no
I'm just
eventually.
first talking about the highest tranche, which I believe are 21 applications. So that's a suggestion to,
Okay,
we need to figure out something. If you're saying yes or no without any explanation to the community, I'm not comfortable with that. So this would be moving the scoring up, and again, that would be more transparent to me.
okay.
And also trying to do some efficiency, but I'm open for other ideas if anybody has any other ideas.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to briefly, I am sorry about that the information didn't get to you till the last minute. I'm sorry that happened. I take responsibility for that part of it. I also saw some things in the chat. I want to make sure those don't get lost. And Michael, how's your audio doing?
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me? All right, great. So one of the things that I just wanted to point out on behalf of the scoring group here is, and I think it goes to the discussion that we were just having about how this could roll out, is that if you look at the scoring, there's a bunch of things that are very standard and very objective, right? And there's a section that's more subjective. But if you look at the scoring distribution in this top category, what we're calling the large applications, right? There's actually a fairly wide distribution of scores. And the reason why we wanted to point that out is that you'll notice that the funding threshold is 61 points. Okay, and by that I mean, if you look at your spreadsheet and you go from the top, let's just say you agreed with our scoring, okay? It's just a starting premise. We would get down to application number 6 and the money would be done, right?
Right.
Essentially, you don't need to vote beyond that step, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that that be the process, but one of the things that we wanted to point out is, as soon as you drop significantly below 61 points, there's almost no way, and in some cases no way, that application could pop above the funding line. Just mathematically, it's not possible, right?
Meaning,
So in effect,
meaning if we accepted the first 6 applications and there's no more money left, is that what you're saying?
It's even more than that.
Okay,
Is to say, if you have already taken into account the more objective numbers that we really don't need to discuss, like number of employees and whether or not they receive prior funding and so on and so forth. Okay. That the ability of an application at the bottom of the pile to be funded is 0. Like, we don't need to discuss the bottom application, which scored,
Which tranche are you looking at?
I'm looking at the large group, the
Okay.
250. So you'll notice the bottom application scored 36. Okay. Even if we were totally wrong on the priority scoring, and we gave them all 25 points, and you decided they should have gotten 25 points for that, right? That would still only get them to 49 points. That's still way below the threshold needed, right? And the same, you keep going up the line, and you'll notice that it's really not until we get into the 50s that any of these applications could flip to above the line versus below the line. So if you're going to examine the scores, our suggestion is take this line, that what we're calling the funding line, and just examine the applications that are within that band of being possibly funded, right?
And you would start it at what number?
I
Like
think
50?
that, I mean, 50 would be the very extreme. I would say even 55 could be a point to start, to just the point to stop, beyond which it really doesn't matter, right? We would have to be, even if we were completely wrong about the priority score, it still wouldn't change the outcome.
But to add to that, Michael, there's a number of projects that are at like 54, 55, 59 that got the full 25 points with aligning with priorities. So
Right.
they're not going to move up anyway. I mean,
And that-
below the funding
right.
line, the only ones that have the opportunity to move up are the Indian Creek one and
You're starting it.
the community building one. They're at 46, 56, and they could get 7 more points. Other than that, the ones below that are getting max alignment points anyway.
Thank you, Veronica. I'll get you in a second. Before we go on, can we take a look at the chat? I just want to make sure we didn't lose anything that flashed through there.
Anything in the chat for us?
That was all about the technical difficulties.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, Veronica.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael and Scott, for bringing up that point. I have 2 questions, maybe an easy one and a hard one. One is there a decision or plan for making the scoring sheet public, or like how much is, like, could someone share it on their screen or something or not? I think it might be easy because I apologize, because we're all referring to the scoring sheet and the different columns on it.
No one else can see it.
Yeah.
I see Tracy shaking her head. Do you want to say something, Tracy?
I was just saying, I was planning on sharing this on the screen. So,
Shareable, okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And then the maybe harder question is, which of the scores are we considering like subject to change and objective? Like, I think it's clear we can change the alignment of the priorities. We are not going to be changing, I think, that last column, that last set that's like prior funding, funding match, demonstrated need, number of employees, probably not financial capacity. Arguably, evaluating the metrics is maybe subjective, but I would like to know what the committee thinks.
Yeah, I'll answer. I am thinking of this kind of differently than Michael just laid out, and some of you too. I think the scoring is one criteria for us to use, and it's not the only one. And I'm taking that into account, but this is not a mathematical process for me. This is a process for me judging what I think is an appropriate and a good use of this funds to have a good impact on the community. The scoring is one criteria. It's not the only criteria. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Ann?
Yeah, we have said over and over again in the public forums, and our policies, that the scoring is the major thing that we're going to look at. So I agree with what Michael said as far as, and which we discussed in email, if the alignment with the priority, some folks in the email said, if the alignment with the priorities is what we would agree, and we haven't agreed on that as a committee yet, but if I think it's a little bit, I'm not sure exactly, but maybe what Veronica was alluding to is that if we're looking at the scoring and we agree that with MR, that we trust, as I do, MRB's scoring as being objective and knowing a lot more about how to evaluate these, and that if the wiggle room that we have is alignment with priorities, then that's where we would go forward, is figuring that out. I think taking the opinion there, or the interpretation that the scoring is only one thing that might have been said at one point, but more consistently, we have said in our literature and our program guidelines that the scoring is the most important thing that's going to be considered. So I would like us to focus on scoring as far as going forward and evaluating them.
I guess I would say you're right. We did put an emphasis on it, but it is never the only thing. That's very, very clear. And you are welcome to use the scores any way you want. I'm saying that I'm satisfied with the information that's been provided to us, and I'm ready to make my decision based on that and other factors that I'm allowed to. I would also say that it sounds like there's some idea here that there's a whole bunch of these that we should say no to right away. If that's the case, let's do that. Let's narrow this right down. Based on math, that's what I heard, that based on the math, a whole bunch of these get no's right away. And if that's the case.
And if we're going to be based on math, then we need to stick with that. I really strongly feel that if we're going to.
Then you can
based on
stick with the math,
scoring,
man.
if
You
we're going to
cannot
start
tell
with
me how to
scoring,
vote.
I'm not telling you how to vote. What I'm
You can
saying,
use math. You can do it.
if we're using scoring, which I agree with, of saying if they didn't, on here, I think it would be 51 or below to say for the highest tranche. I'm comfortable with MRB scoring and accepting that to say 51 and below for right now. We say no and then entertain the ones above that. So that's based on scoring. And I'm just saying I would like to stick with scoring as much as we can. And so.
John, did you have your hand up? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, then go.
I specifically remember whenever we had this discussion, and one thing that was really important to everyone that was at the meeting was that we look at our priorities as a county. And we agreed that every single legislator would have their own priorities as far as where we were going to land and how we wanted the funding distributed. And that was the really important part. MRB was going to do the basics. They were going to go through the calculations, provide us with a number, kind of like as a baseline. Like, if you're at 50, 51, whatever we want to call the number, like you're kind of in. And then after that, we have to question a little bit more. As far as us voting things up and down, I'll be very upfront in saying that my top three are going to be childcare, homelessness, and mental health. And so if there's money for those three topics, I'm probably going to vote for it. For other things, I'll be open to it, certainly. But those are the three biggest things that I see in our community that I would like to commit funding to. And I think that us, the biggest conversation whenever we met during figuring all this out was we wanted to make sure that legislators had the independence and the autonomy to pick projects that we think would be good for our community. As lovely as MRB is, they don't necessarily know our community. And as great as their scoring is, and I will take that into consideration, I think that's just one piece of the puzzle. So I agree with Annie in saying that in order for us to move forward, I think if we say 50 and below, at least at this time, we take them off of our spreadsheet.
Veronica.
I'm fine with the like 50 and below off the spreadsheet thing, or at least, well, I don't think we've seen the scoring for the smallest batch, the preliminary scoring for the smallest batch yet, but at least for the top two. Something I don't want to see happen is a project that has scored very high on the sheet not get funded, and a project that has scored much lower on the sheet get funded without any additional explanation. With explanation that matches the guidelines, whether that's like, whatever that is, I think that's great, but I think it would be like sort of inappropriately opaque to make decisions that seem really at odds with the preliminary scoring, if the preliminary scoring is all that the public and the applicants like get as feedback on that. If people in this meeting propose, like, I actually think this should have been scored way higher, or like, I know this scored really high, but I think it should have been scored lower, or, but we already put, half the fund money into like X topic, and this is just more of that. Those are all reasons. There could be many reasons in the scoring or not. But I don't like the idea of just like getting, making decisions that aren't aligned with the table, the preliminary scoring, like without any explanation. Decisions that are aligned with the table without explanation are, well, there's the scoring. That's what people can look at as a likely basis.
Well, I hear you, but I'm going to repeat what I said before. That's what we do in the OTRs. We spend a lot of time talking about it. We cannot do that with this, or we will be here forever. Here's the explanation that I offer for anyone that's not getting funded. There are many worthy causes and projects that we are saying no to. No does not mean that the application is bad. All these projects are worthy, otherwise they would not have made it this far. We don't feel good about saying no to a worthy project. That's the explanation. We can only fund 20%. That's it.
I've asked, so it's going to maybe take a few minutes, but I asked Norma to add up the amounts for the ones, let's see, for the ones that scored 55 and above on the higher tranche, the highest tranche, to add up the minimum request amounts to see what that total would be. And so I think she has it. Just to throw a number out.
So there's a few of the blanks that are missing. So this isn't exactly perfect, but it's about 2.8 million. But you see that on the spreadsheet, the Indian Creek didn't have an amount in that minimum. So I'm summing the minimum. And then also the Unity House didn't have a minimum. So I'm assuming that, and Tracy can probably jump in on that, but I'm assuming that those folks, is kind of an all or nothing for them, but she can.
So there's two categories here. Some just didn't list a minimum. Some said something like any amount will help. Others said that they wouldn't be able to move forward without the funding. And those ones, I think we tried to put in there in the minimum as the actual ask amount.
So we have 2.8 million.
Okay, so also,
Okay.
Anna, I just got to point out, you just asked for the partial question, and that's a whole nother can of worms.
Well, can I
Sure.
just say why I was
Absolutely,
asking that?
yep,
And
mhm.
so to me, that's helpful to hear that. So you said 2.8 million approximately. And the bucket we have for that is 4 million. So right now, if we decide we're going to take scores of 55 and above, 2.8 million, and then we have 3 that don't have something listed, we might be close to figuring that out if we did minimums and then asked other ones, you know, and if they were interested in having something lower. That's one way to go.
Okay, Shauna, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to go down to the at least 51. Because, you know, you look at the ones that are that would have gotten knocked off. And we're looking at Unity House, Food Net Meals on Wheels, Unbroken Promises, and childcare. And so, I mean, you know, it's all going to come down to priorities, but, you know, I think another thing that we should bring up is the fact that if someone puts out $773,000 and asks for that amount requested and doesn't have a minimum, you know, quite honestly, them not having a minimum, I don't think I would be willing to do $773,000, you know, or the other one that asked for $1 million and there's no minimum, you know, like, I don't think I would be willing to allocate 25% of this funding to the Unity House. You know, and so I think there are some that we could probably mark off based on the fact that they don't have a minimum request.
So go ahead, Ann. I'm going to point out that, first of all, if we had just voted yes or no on all of these, we'd be done. And that would, obviously we disagree about all kinds of ways to do this. That's why we just need to vote yes or no. It doesn't matter what, why, how much, what, yes or no, because that in the end is what we have to do. In the end, we must vote yes or no. Why don't we start that way and just bypass all this inability to even come to an agreement on what the factors are? I don't know. I don't see what's so wrong with just
Yes or no, we would fund them?
each one. Yep. It goes in the yes pile or the no pile.
Can we vote on that? Because I think
On the
if we get,
process, you mean?
yeah, if we get 3 votes, we move forward with the yes or no.
It begs,
Go ahead, Lee.
it begs the question, what happens if we go through the yes or no's? There's a method out, there's a thinking here. If you go through the yes or no's and you still are above the amounts that, if we still exceed what we've set aside for each tranche, then that is the point where you would come back and do some individual evaluation to prioritize them. I'm okay with that.
The first sorting, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. So in a minute, we will vote on that process, but I think maybe there was some more thoughts that need to get shared. Veronica.
I just, maybe like Lee said, I'm okay with yes or no for the first sorting. I'm not okay with just yes or no as the final decision.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I can see your wheels spinning.
I would prefer to do yes or no, we agree with the scoring, not yes or no, we want to fund them. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't think we've done our due diligence with just voting. You know, you can have 3 people here that knock one off at the, you know, that has, for instance, one of the top scores just because we say no at this point. And
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with that. We've figured out an ethical and transparent process yet.
When you say just because we say, but that is our job to say yes or no. That is it. That is what we're here for.
This is a process we're just figuring out now. As I said earlier, we didn't figure out the process before we came into this room. We're working on figuring out that process. And once we figure out the process, I want more time to go back, and we're going to go based on X, Y, and Z. I want time to go back. I might, I mean, I'm just thinking, I have meetings today, I have 2 meetings this evening. I might feel comfortable tomorrow going through the highest tranche, maybe with a yes or no that I agree with the scoring.
We've got to
But-
keep going. I mean, most of us only have 9 hours to dedicate to this. I mean, we can't extend our first tranche by 3 days.
Well, okay, well,
We can.
we could have kept our last community recovery meeting and gone through that process before we came in today, but that's not what happened.
We couldn't because MRB Group had a very large job, which was to sort through
Sure, they were
200 and
busy
something
with that,
applications.
but we haven't figured out the process. Once we figure out the process, you know, this is really important. I'm not then prepared to use that criteria. I want to go back and look at the applications once we figure out the criteria. I came in here not knowing, so I didn't rank them. I didn't say yes or no because I didn't have the criteria that what we were going to use as the next steps. So I'm not prepared today. So I would, if we were going to do that, I really object to that. I guess I'd say I
So noted.
strongly object. We have not figured out the process. I think this deserves a lot more consideration from us. This is we're going to make our recommendations to the full legislature. The people that put in, MRB, of course, spent a ton of time on this. The community spent a ton of time trying to figure out their applications according to our guidelines. And I think it deserves a lot more consideration. And again, I would do it more based on scoring and figure out how we adjust our score first, if we are going to adjust the score.
Veronica.
You said the MRB folks had some sort of orientation presentation for us. Would that be helpful to hear now? I don't know what's in it. but-
Yeah. So I know we're going to talk about ethics. Well, Tracy, Michael, do you want to tell us what's in store for us?
Yeah, so we did have some thoughts on process, which Michael kind of already started to talk about. But otherwise, it's really about conflict of interest, some updates or just some reminders about some of the guidance that we had given to the applicants over time or during the process. And then the reminders of the priorities. And we can also go over how that we scored the priority scoring category. So you know exactly how we approached that in the most objective way that we could. So that's about the extent of the opening presentation.
Thank you. We will get to your opening presentation soon. Okay, we're gonna take a little vote on how to proceed. And I guess, I don't know, help me out here. Does this need to be a resolution?
Can we have the point of order?
Yes, please.
I would prefer to have any presentations or anything on first. Especially anything about ethics and how to proceed. Any advice or that they can give us.
Badly.
If there's a discussion about how the priorities came about, would that alleviate some of your concerns, Ann, and that the scoring is solid enough for us to work forward on?
I know how that's not what I need. I was a part of it, was figuring out the priorities. And I am comfortable with the scoring. I think it's others that are saying they want to just vote yes or no. To me, the scoring is very important. So I know how that came about. I mean, if MRB thinks it's important, or if other people want to hear how the scoring came about or what they told the community, but I did watch the two of the ones that were public or that were broadcast on Zoom. I watched two of the presentations, one for businesses, one geared towards nonprofits. So I heard what was said to the community, which is a lot of the, which informs my thinking today that we follow what was told to the community.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, and I also watched it again last night. I'm gonna just give you a couple of quotes from it. Quote, "The scores are for conversational purposes and to speed the process along." That was what was said to the community. Another one, and I'm sorry, this is gonna sound a little embarrassing to MRB, but I don't mean it this way. Quote, "Our scores technically mean nothing. The legislature is the decision maker here," unquote. Quote, "They, the legislature, may change our score," unquote. Individual interpretation of priority and the ability of a project to meet the priority is subjective. These were all things that got said in public. So there's different ways to interpret. You know, we didn't pin down an exact process here. And that's why we just need to decide, okay, some people want to do it this way. Some people want to say, it's time to decide what we're going to do. I have no objection to MRB doing its presentation first before a vote. So Tracy, Michael, whoever, you're on. Floor is
Dan,
yours.
Dan, just one note before
Yes.
we go to that.
Please.
We need 4 votes in the affirmative for anything to pass out of the committee. Just remember that.
No, thank you. MRB, you're on.
Okay. Can everybody see that? You've got this?
Yes.
Okay. So again, here are the things that we're going to go over today. We're going to do some conversation around conflict of interest. We're going to go over the preliminary scoring process that we undertook so that you can understand how we came to the preliminary scoring process. There's just a couple of items that I wanted to talk about in terms of, but we were having conversations, not just those public seminars, but conversations with applicants about, you know, how to structure applications. And so we want you to be aware of some of the guidance we provided in those conversations. We had some thoughts about proposed process, but we'll see how things go once we get to that point. And then just some reminders moving forward as we go forward in the discussion and the scoring. Michael, did you want to take conflict of interest?
Sure. Yeah, we went through multiple times. We went through a similar process with other communities. And in general, we're borrowing heavily from that previous process. This is what we're suggesting. We're asking committee members to disclose any conflicts of interest or any perceived conflicts of interest. And that's just simply by stating, if an application is being discussed, that you state the fact that you have some relationship, and we'll talk about what that conflict might be. Obviously act in the public interest and disqualify if necessary. That disqualification is something that we will talk about in just a little bit more detail. So acting in the public interest, I think you're quite familiar with this, you know, your regular conflict of interest, but obviously this confidential information, we would have to do that in executive session, but also we wouldn't want to share that with the public in general. And then if you're going to have a privilege that results from the outcome of a vote. As far as how we determine what a conflict of interest is, we would obviously rely on your county attorney if there's a question that comes up, but you can see the bullet points on the screen here that discuss what that is. You know, you're obviously in the public eye, and one of the things that comes up is whether or not a committee member should discuss a particular application if there is a conflict. This is, I'll tell you how we have resolved this in these previous instances. The committee member declares the conflict, and the committee member recuses themselves from the discussion on that application. And the only instance where we have seen that change is if there's a question of fact and a committee member raises a question. And an example could be, how many employees do they have? Or, you know, didn't they get a grant from these folks or something? And there's a question. If the committee member who has recused themselves knows the information and can clarify, then they're welcome to provide that. but the question should come from a non-conflicted committee member posed as opposed to volunteered by the conflicted committee member. I hope that's clear. And if it's not, I'm glad to discuss further. But really beyond that, the recusal would prohibit you from voting on that particular application. And I think that's it for conflict of interest. Except that we will just state for the purposes of the record, there are 2 applications. Nobody on the review team is involved in any way with these applications, but we do want to state that MRB Group provided some engineering services to the applicants, the Village of Trumansburg and the Village of Dryden. We had no involvement, we being Tracy, myself, Emma, and the team that's doing the scoring. But just as an example, those are two cases where we want to make sure that you're aware that you might see an attachment that has MRB Group listed in it.
Thank you. I'm going to pause you there for a second. First of all, I think part of either our own ethics policy or what you've laid out for us is that that conflicts need to go in the minutes. So could we put that last sentence in the minutes that MRB just talked about? Thank you. So yeah, let's pause for questions or comments on this disclosure and ethics and conflict of interest. Go ahead, Ann.
So one question I have is if somebody had a direct financial benefit, say it was their company or they had some financial interest in a company, then I'm thinking, according to I think our county ethics, is that person would leave the room when we discuss that. But I'm wondering, because I think this is a possibility, right, for one application.
I believe it's going to be in the full legislature, but probably not in this committee.
So at the full legislature, if we're discussing scoring, I mean, we might want to think about how, if that person's going to leave the room for scoring, because if we're scoring some organizations, that affects how, or grant, not just scoring, but applications, whether we accept them or not, or whether we want to fund them or not, that affects somebody else's being able to be funded. So I'm thinking that person, or maybe we need to ask our legal.
Yes, if you could just keep that question alive, please, when
Okay.
we get between now and the full legislature. Thank you.
All right, but I don't think that'll come up for this, but we'll disclose it at what point? When we get to that tranche? Like say, for instance, I'm on a board of one organization and or, well, a lot of us are on different boards, so.
Right, I'd actually, I'm going to pause you for a sec there and ask my question, which maybe will help a little
Okay.
bit. How does this apply to those of us that are on boards of not-for-profits or otherwise, but we are unpaid? It's just a volunteer position.
My understanding, I'm obviously happy to defer to the county attorney, but my understanding is that would not be considered a conflict. If there's no financial gain or financial loss for that matter, then there's no conflict.
Thank you. I see all of us nodding our heads too. So it sounds like we all agree on that. That was an easy one then.
Okay,
Point that out though.
that we're on that board.
I think that
We
would be
just
nice.
we
Yeah.
disclose it, but we could still vote on it. Okay,
That feels good.
that's good to know,
Thank you.
whether we can do that or not. Okay.
I see Amanda with her hand up.
Hello, good morning. I was listening on YouTube and just, I guess similar to Annie's question, obviously, I think you folks on the committee have to disclose if you're, if there's a conflict of interest as you're voting on these. But I think I would also, when it comes to the full legislature, we would need to go through that list. And if somebody at that time also has a conflict, we would need to work out how we're going to vote on things so that they can recuse themselves fully for that particular item. So obviously it doesn't need to be worked out now, but thinking about for the full legislature discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And I'm also going to ask you to help us remember to keep that question alive as we get closer to that moment. Other questions or thoughts about the conflict of interest and disclosure policies? I wanted to ask too, how should we think about an applicant who we consider a friend?
I will say the conflict of interest is limited to a direct relationship or a direct family member. There's no contemplation of friendships. That's certainly something you could disclose, but I don't believe it actually moves into the conflict.
Amanda?
That's an interesting question. And I thought about that too, as I was looking at, the names of the applicants and people I know. And I guess I think that, most of us have gone through a process of hiring and having internal candidates, and maybe people applied for jobs that we were on the search committee where we knew those people. And I guess I would refer us back to some of that, anti-bias training, and really only looking at the application material, the work that this organization does, and not necessarily about this particular person that I know it's really hard to differentiate and pull that out and pull out your personal, opinions of someone or of a friendship. But I do think it's possible to keep that in mind and say, you're not evaluating your friend, you're evaluating an application, and try to keep it at that. But that's hard, but that's my suggestion.
Thank you. That feels like sound advice to me. Any other thoughts about this topic before we move on? Okay, back to you, MRBers.
So in this preliminary scoring process, this is how we address the scoring. So procedurally, we first went through each and every application and processed them for eligibility and completeness. Any application that was considered incomplete or ineligible was not scored. And then for the 211 that were determined complete and eligible, we had 5 scorers at MRB Group. The top tranche, the 250 or the above 250 group, only Michael and Emma scored. So those, to make sure that there's as much consistency as possible. But just keep in mind, as we're going through, that there were 5 scorers. We did go through and try to make sure that everything was done consistently, but obviously different people have different perspectives, just like all of you. So you might see some differences in how things were done, but we've done a lot of work to triangulate and make sure there's as much consistency as possible, given the volume of applications. You've already identified which are the entirely objective criteria, the number of employees, prior receipt of funding, those types of things. And then when it came to the priority alignment area, we took an approach of looking at those and assigning points based on how well the application aligned with each priority. So there are the 7 priority areas. If there was clear alignment, we gave that application a 6. If there was partial or tangential alignment, we gave it a 3. And if there was no alignment, we gave it a 0. And you can see that obviously there was a maximum of 25, but as we sorted the list of the applications, there was a secondary sorting by the kind of unrestricted priority scoring. So if 2 applications both got a 60, then they were then ordered by how well they aligned with the priority scoring on the back end. So that's how we approach the priority alignment. And, obviously there might be agreement or disagreement about either how that was done or some decisions that we made, but that's what you're seeing in the priority alignment scoring.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, I see none. So
Can we get this sent, the presentation sent to the full legislature?
Absolutely.
So a couple of things that I just wanted to mention in terms of guidance that we provided to applicants along the way. We did tell them that, there's no prohibition to providing multiple applications, that, in a competitive situation, that might become something to consider, but all in all, applicants were welcome to submit as many as they would like to. I did encourage them, if they had multiple applications that were all working towards the same goal, to try to find a way to make that a single project, and talk about it as a comprehensive approach. But in cases where that wasn't possible, to go ahead and submit multiple applications. There are a few instances of fiscal sponsorships in the mix. So this is where a program, it's either a program or a connected entity. So there are a few entities that have multiple applications, but either none or maybe just one of those applications is impacting that actual applicant. And rather, the funding is really supporting something like a subsidiary program. And so CTA is an example. There's a number of applications from them, but most of them, I think all of them, are for programs that are fiscal sponsorships of CTA, as opposed to directly impacting CTA itself. We also had a lot of discussions with applicants about grant amounts, how much to ask for, guidance around the minimum, the question about the minimum, and partial awards. So basically, the guidance that I was giving folks is, ask for what you need. And, the minimum is really intended to give some guide rails for if a partial award is needed for whatever reason or is determined to be appropriate. That's the guide rail to tell us when does the project become infeasible? At what point is the funding not even going to help the project move forward? So the idea was that it isn't necessarily to say we're going to give everybody the minimum. The idea is more so there may be a need for partial awards in certain circumstances, and this will make sure that we don't give less, or that the legislature doesn't approve less than is actually helpful for the project. And we did make it very clear that partial awards are possible. They may or may not happen, but that's definitely part of the decision-making process.
Can I ask a question about?
Please, Ann.
Thanks. Tracy, I have a question regarding partial awards. As it was mentioned, some don't say, for instance, the minimum, but that doesn't preclude them possibly accepting a smaller amount. Is that correct?
So no,
Or what should we glean from empty spots under the minimum request?
So some of them have said any amount is going to be helpful. And some of them have said, I can't move forward with anything less than a full award. And we'll try to give you some guidance on which scenario that is as we go through and have conversations about applications.
Okay, so we can't necessarily see that from the chart.
No, it looks like for some reason in this chart, the minimums didn't come over the way I thought they would. My intention was to have the blank ones be the ones that just literally didn't give a minimum. And that if someone checked no, that that means, or I'm sorry, that the minimum would show as the requested amount, but that didn't actually translate into the sheet that you got, but I'll make sure that it translates for the smaller applicants.
So it could be that they would accept. So there's a possibility, even if it says nothing right now in that section, that they might accept something, a lesser amount. Is that correct?
Yes. So in the big group, I can tell you that only one of them that is blank said we can't move forward with a partial award. The other ones just didn't provide a minimum, and that gives you a lot of flexibility to decide what makes sense for the program.
And is it a possibility that those that did state a minimum request or a minimum amount, that they might accept something lower?
It could, but the idea is that's really the level at which the project is possible. And basically what they've indicated by putting in that amount is that if you award less than that the project can't move forward.
Okay.
So that's something to consider.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this section?
Would an example of that, would that be flagged when we hit that application? Would you tell us if that was one that couldn't proceed without the full funding?
Yeah, so in the next tranche that we sent out, I'll make sure that the minimum awards reflect that. And that the blank ones are only ones that didn't give a minimum. But as we're going through the top tranche, I'll make sure to flag that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tracy, do you have more for us?
Okay, so as for process, you can see here, these are the amounts that were assigned to each bucket originally. But originally there was also some intent that you could move some funding around as needed or as appropriate based on the applications received. But these are the figures that we've been using to identify where that funding threshold is. So for the large tranche, it was $4 million. So that's where that blue line is around the $4 million mark. And, you know, Michael already kind of talked about what we were thinking in terms of going through the scoring and really focusing conversation around that threshold to make sure that the conversation is focused around where there could actually be changes if there are adjustments to the scoring, which Michael explained previously. We also thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about executive session. And, you know, executive session is possible, particularly for the purpose of discussing the financials of any particular applicant. So if there's a conversation to be had about their financial position, that we would want to do an executive session. And what we would recommend is kind of flagging that. And then towards the end of the meeting, having one executive session to go over those concepts or those questions, so that we're going into executive session once instead of kind of in and out throughout the course of the meeting. Obviously, that's a decision to be made by the body, but that would be our recommendation, is to just flag those and handle them all in a single executive session. And then finally, around seeker, the conversations that we've been having are, obviously, Joan mentioned that she's currently working through some seeker reviews for all of the applicants that are that would trigger seeker for a funding decision by the county. The idea is that hopefully, you know, the ones that are a little bit more straightforward, we can have done or ready for a decision by the time the full legislature is ready to make awards. But we would recommend that if there are one or two that have a longer term process, to perhaps hold back on the award decision for those particular projects and go ahead and award the rest of them that are all set on seeker, so that these one or two projects aren't necessarily holding up the whole bunch. And this is a little bit different than I guess the county would typically do a seeker process, and having those recommendations go straight to the legislature as opposed to perhaps through a committee. But that will help to keep the timeline on track.
Thank you. Questions or comments about this slide? I don't see any. Is there more? Yeah.
And then this is kind of the slide that we'll go back to throughout this process at every meeting, to just remind folks, you know, to disclose any conflicts and make any recusals as needed. And then with the program priorities. So this is going to be our base slide that we'll remind everybody of at the beginning of each of our committee meetings, and make sure that we have everything in place for the conflicts and the priorities. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions about this slide? Comments? Okay. Thank you. I do think the next thing we need to do is decide on our process going forward. So I'd entertain a motion to proceed with yes or no votes on each application, with the understanding that when we're all done with that process, we're going to have to decide on the next level of review. Thank you, Lee. Is there a second? Thank you, Shauna. Discussion about this motion. Veronica.
Sorry, can you clarify? We're going to do yes or no votes, and then what is happening with the result of the yes or no vote?
I mean, okay, thank you. Yeah, I would say that at that point, we no longer look at the no votes.
And when you say no votes, is that ones that have gotten like majority no from
Majority, yeah.
the people present? Okay.
These are all good questions. Thank you, because we are inventing this process as we go along. Yep, I think that is a good way to think of it. So it would be, we would be eliminating anything that received a majority of no votes.
3 or 4 votes.
So let's see. That's a great question.
We need 4
Yeah.
to pass anything, for any action.
Yeah. So I guess it's 4 no votes. Does that sound right?
4 no's or 4 yeses.
Yeah, 4 no's or 4 yeses.
And further question, are we doing this on all the applications right now or just the highest tranche or just the highest 2 tranches? I would prefer not to vote on the lowest tranche now because I was waiting for the preliminary scoring and I frankly haven't really looked at them.
Yeah, good question. If this idea passes of how to process this, then we'll start with what we have, which is the highest tranche, and then we will see how to go from there.
Should I amend my motion to vote yes or no, and that 4 yeses are required?
I think it would be worthwhile to state that, yeah.
So moved.
Thank you.
Or amended.
Is that friendly to? Okay. Tracy?
Yeah, so just so you know, we are finishing up the lower batch and we didn't intend to talk about the lower batch at all these first 2 meetings. So you'll be getting those in the next few days, that preliminary scoring in the next few days for the smaller batch.
Thank you. Okay, further discussion about the resolution on the floor. Ann?
I would prefer, if we're going to do a yes or no, that we, as I mentioned before, is that if we're going to do a yes or no, I would like it to be that we agree with the scoring or not approving the application.
Are you making an amendment?
Yes,
Okay, so you
that the
want to
yes or
state it one
no,
more time, just to be clear?
that the yes or no, we agree with the scoring. So in essence, that would mean we agree with the ranking of where it is now. So then the no's would be, if we said yes, we would then go back, possibly the next step might be the no's, we go back and look at, do we want to adjust the scoring which we haven't figured out, if we want to adjust scoring and how we would do that and what, we just haven't figured that out at all. But that's what I would suggest as would be the next step, was we say no, and then we could go back and look, like if Shauna mentioned one organization or 2 maybe, that, hey, what about that one? So if we went through all of the 21 here on the highest tranche and one was no, and then we would go back and look at how would we adjust that score?
Okay, is there a second for this amendment? Veronica seconds. Okay, first of all, clerks, do you have a clear enough wording? Thank you. Discussion about the amendment. We've already had a lot of discussion, but we can have more if we need. Okay, let's vote on the amendment then. So we are voting a yes. The yes vote means that the resolution has been changed to say we're voting on the scoring. The no vote means we are not going to
That you agree with scoring.
agree with the scoring. Okay. So is everyone clear what we're voting on?
Say that one more time.
Sure. A yes vote on this means that the main motion would now be, we are agreeing whether we would be voting on whether we agree with the scoring. A no vote means, no, we're not going to modify the resolution, which we still have not voted on. Any other questions? No.
So the upshot is that if this amendment passes, we're in 2 rounds of voting. One's on the score and then eventually we get to the up or down on the proposal.
That's how I see it. Okay, let's have a vote then. Shauna,
No.
Veronica,
Yes.
This is the amendment, right?
amendment, yep.
Yes,
Ann,
yes.
Lee,
No,
I'm a no. It's not enough votes to pass. I am going to call for a recess, a 5-minute recess and come back.
think it's more. Actually doing the same thing we're gonna do for that.
Okay, we're going to get started again. Okay, so we left the motion sitting on the floor, apparently. The amendment was defeated, right? So we're back to the main motion. Does anyone need the main motion repeated before we have a vote?
I moved to amend the main motion.
Yes, you can.
That I don't know how to word it, but that we vote whether we want to yes to continue considering an application and no to not. And a unanimous no is final and we don't continue considering it. If that's a thing we can do. But I defer to the clerks.
Okay, so the amendment is that in order for a project to be eliminated at this stage, it would need a unanimous no.
That is the amendment I'm proposing, yes.
Thank you. Is there a second to that amendment? Shauna? Ann, did you want to discuss the amendment?
Yes, it's, so this would change it that the purpose would be to help us eliminate some.
That is what I was thinking, yes.
So that would be not doing anything really yet with any that got some yeses, but it would just be for ones that got unanimous no's, we take off the table. Is that take out of consideration?
That's
Is that what you're meaning?
That is what I'm meaning. I imagine it might also give us a picture of the level of support for other applications, even though we're not distinguishing between maybe support it partially and this is the best thing we've ever seen.
So that would be 21 votes we'd have to go through for this, but that might get us, if we got a chunk closer, so anyway, I'll be voting yes on this because I think this will be a chunk that would help us get closer without having to make the final decisions yet.
Veronica, I wanted to be clear, if I may. So what about the yes votes?
Then.
In the original proposal, there's a
Yeah.
majority of the committee yes vote advances. Yes vote goes in the yes pile.
I guess even one yes vote goes in the yes pile. I'm not sure what we are doing with this yes pile, so
Still in consideration, is that what you said, Dan? They're just still in consideration?
So you're
Right.
modifying your amendment to say it only takes one yes to stay in contention.
that is my whole amendment.
I guess that is the same, yeah, two sides of the same coin. Okay. Further discussion? Sean?
Sorry.
No problem.
So I'm trying to figure this out and I'm looking, there are under our spreadsheet for the $250,000 or more, there are 3 different applicants that do not have a minimum request. Before we vote on this, can you just let us know, are these 3 applicants, if we do not meet the minimum request, or if we do not meet the full amount, are they no longer asking for that, a minimum amount?
So the 3 that are in there now, are you asking, are any of these the ones that said, no, we can't take a partial award? Is
Yeah.
that, Okay, the only one that said, no, we can't take a partial award is 153 Indian Creek Midwifery and Birth Center. The other ones did not provide a minimum. Unity House indicated essentially that any reductions will just change the timeline of the work, not stop the work from happening.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I need to just clarify one, Tracy, I believe Cayuga,
Michael, can you get closer to your mic or something? We're having trouble hearing you a little bit.
I believe that the Cayuga Medical Center said their project would not move forward if they were funded less than their request. I have that project open, they clicked no.
Oh,
To
okay.
the project move forward if a partial award, a partial TFR funding was awarded, and the answer is no.
Okay, so then two of them would say they would not move forward with a partial award.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so back to our amendment here. I'm going to vote no. We follow parliamentary procedure. We can suspend the rules if we need to. I don't see a justification for doing that at this time. We need a majority of the committee to move things forward, and a majority in this case is 4. So I'm going to vote against this amendment. Any other discussion? Okay, so we're voting on the amendment. A yes vote means that the main motion now becomes, in order for anything to be eliminated, it needs unanimous noes. Any questions about what we're voting on? Okay, let's vote. Lee? Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
Shauna?
No.
And I'm a no, so that does not pass. We are now on the main motion, right? And that was the original one, which is to just do an up and down vote. Any further discussion?
Yeah, could you clarify one more time what happens to things that, so the threshold is a 4 people voting yes, and what happens to the
Yes.
project on both sides of that?
So if 4 people vote yes, then that goes into the pile of still under consideration. We're going to have to take a second pass at all of them eventually, all the yeses. If it gets 4 noes, it's eliminated. Any other questions about the resolution? Okay, let's have a vote then. Shauna?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
Ann?
No.
Lee?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's 4-1, that does pass. Thank you, committee. We are now, I believe, we are ready to start voting. Is there any other business?
I am not ready. I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
We just figured out this procedure. And I'm not prepared to go forward with the yes or no. I didn't know, we didn't have a procedure coming in here. I am not prepared. I would prefer that we start this tomorrow. This is really important. These are talking about a lot of money to a lot of organizations. And if this is what we've agreed to, then, whatever process we wanted to do, I need time to go through with that in mind. Versus, I didn't know if we were going to go and change the scoring. But if we're not going to go and change the scoring, we're going to do something different. I need time to go back and look at them again and figure out whether I want to vote yes or no. This is really important. I think the community and the applicants deserve us time to really think this through and contemplate this versus just a yes or no with a new procedure that's brand new to us right now. So I don't know if it's moving it or something, but I would really like us to consider whether this committee, whether it's really ethical, whether it's fair to vote. I would like to see if there's other things that the committee can do today. Are there other things that we need to work on or discuss or figure out for the other tranches? but I think this is not fair.
Okay.
For me, for sure, but I don't think it's fair to the community.
Okay, I'll respond, and then anyone else would like to respond as well. I'm willing to honor that request, Ann. If you are willing to give me some kind of assurance that you're willing to move quickly through this process, because today was not that demonstration to me. So if tomorrow means we're going to start on this, but we're going to discuss every single application, then no, I'm going to say we need to start now because we're just going to run out of time. Do you have any response to that?
I'm not sure what you mean by that I'm not moving quickly. Is
Yes or no
that what
votes?
you're saying?
Yes or
That
no votes with minimal discussion?
I don't know if well, if we're going to do these yes or nos, I have to, am I prepared to go yes or no? I mean,
I guess I'm asking, will you be prepared tomorrow to just vote yes or no and without lots of discussion in each one?
Sure. But I really don't appreciate the characterization that I'm slowing this down.
Well, I think it's pretty clear to me that you are. So that's why I said it.
I am doing the best that I can do for the community. And I think it deserves time. We had 211 applications. Was it 32 or 34 million that we have to decide? These are really important. And I think it's worthy of me going through it. I'm not going to go faster than I'm comfortable. I think this is actually fairly fast as far as us voting on these tomorrow. I think that's pretty fast. And I mean, to me, it slightly borders on intimidation. So if we're going to vote on them tomorrow, I'm fine with that.
Okay, and I apologize if you feel intimidated, and I'm trying to do my job, which is to move us through a process efficiently. And so I'm sorry that it's coming across as intimidation. Other committee members want to weigh in on whether we're done today or not? Veronica.
I would be fine to save voting on applications for tomorrow, but if we're going to do that, we have more time in this meeting and we haven't there's going to be more of the process after a yes, no vote, however we do it. So is it possible for us to better establish what that process is going to be? Maybe not. Maybe that's too optimistic, but because then we could all look back at the applications between now and tomorrow with whatever process we've established in mind, including things like noting where partial funding is an option and where we would or wouldn't support that. And then with a clearer sense of the process, come in ready tomorrow to vote quickly. What I'm saying is, can we figure out further steps of the process today if we're not going to do any voting on specific applications today?
I think one process, so I've been on the FEMA board for a few years, and what's been really helpful is that once we get to the yeses and nos, and say we have 10 agencies that are yeses, the way that the FEMA board actually works is we have a spreadsheet on the projector and we could see our balance. And so if we go to our first ranked spot or our first organization and it has 500,000 and we all vote to agree that we're going to spend 500,000 or disperse $500,000. What we see is that at the bottom of the spreadsheet, we see that number go down. It's kind of like many years ago, whenever we did OTRs, we would see that, and what Norma has also brought forward for us. I think that as long as we can see the numbers, we could vote forward things. Obviously it would make sense for us to prioritize so that we're voting on the things that the majority of us probably will vote forward. But I think we need some type of spreadsheet so that we could see the numbers and see what it looks like. And typically for that board, they will have a mover. I move that we give I don't know, Human Services Coalition, $1,000, there'll be a second, and then you'll all vote on it, and then you'll see it decline on the spreadsheets. So that is just, one thing that I've seen work really well. I'm kind of going back to the idea that I brought up at the very beginning of the meeting of us getting a spreadsheet and going back to ranking them. And then we turn it in this evening to MRB. We have a list of the rankings and the bottom 10 will drop off, and then we discuss the top 15 or whatever. Because I think that will eliminate us going back and forth, and at least we can have a good starting point for tomorrow. So.
Committee members, idea of whether we should be done today or not, and also Shauna's idea of a different way to sort.
Sorry, Shauna, can you maybe say that spreadsheet idea again? I don't
Yeah,
quite have it.
so the way that they have it is that,
Sorry, not the displaying, the voting and the meeting thing made sense, but
Yeah.
the us ranking and submitting to MRB thing.
so the way that we could do it is essentially for us all to rank where we would have our own priorities as far as where we would rank each or each organization that's applied. They would then take all 6 members and then put them on the spreadsheet based on, let's just say Burger King got the top ranking, Wendy's got the second ranking, so-and-so got the third ranking, so that at least we start with some parity. And we can vote on those amounts. We could change the amounts. And then as we vote them forward, I mean, ideally, if something has 6 votes, then we know that we all have buy-in and that's probably going to move forward. We'll take the money out of the pot, we'll see the money decline, and we'll know how much we have to work with the next 10 or next 9.
I guess one of the first questions I have about that is who would do that? How would that happen?
I mean, I think what would make sense is we look at our list of, how many did you say? What do we have, 26? Is that what was?
21 in the top tranche, but many, many in the middle
Yeah,
one.
and we would, I don't know how we do it with the other one. I mean, if it works well, we might consider doing it for the others, but for the numbers that we have here, we would send over, maybe our top 10, top 15. And then we would go from there and we could just make a list. Number 1, so-and-so, number 2, so-and-so. And then we could send it to, I don't know who from MRB. I don't know if Tracy or Michael or whomever. And then it shouldn't be that hard. There are only 6 of us that are going to be adding input.
Tracy, can you comment on this idea? Or I guess the mechanics of it from your end?
I'll let Michael comment.
Sure, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, a rank order, let's say you wanted to limit it to a certain number, but ideally it would be all of them, and you'd rank order them, 1 being the best and 21 being the bottom. We would add up all of your ranks. So the best possible outcome would be someone gets 6, right? Which means every single committee member voted it as the top application. We would take those numbers, we would sort the application based on this committee rank score. So that's what we would need. We can give you guys very quickly a list of the 21 applications, and you put them in from 1 to 21.
So that would have to happen by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, that we would all have to have done our rankings, sent them in, and have you sorted it. Is that a realistic timeline for everyone involved?
Or just the top tranche?
Okay. Ann?
So we just passed something that said we're going to do a yes or no tomorrow. Is if we did a ranking, would this be in addition to it? So this would just be like informational?
Well, I have some questions too. That's one of them. And the other is, what about that middle tranche? I mean, that's going to be over 100.
I think we're going to have to figure out something else. you know, and maybe quite honestly, only do your top 20.
Top 20 for the middle tranche.
Yeah.
And we would have to do this by tomorrow. We'd have to, each one of us would have to go
Well,
through.
we're probably not going to get to the middle tranche tomorrow.
What's our
Yeah.
next tranche?
I think we're just talking, we're still trying to figure out for this one here.
Yeah, but-
Right, Shauna, you're talking about
Yeah,
for this one here to
Yes.
try that. So that's what I'm focused on is,
But tomorrow, whether we do the first method or the second method, that's going to not take very long tomorrow, and we have to keep going. So we have to have the plan for the rest of the voting. Lorna,
Just to jump into the fun, I don't want to take the fun away from MRB group, but
I bet they share the fun.
maybe it would be, we use the technology and do a Survey Monkey or something like that, rather than you all trying to compile your information. We send out a Survey Monkey, you guys answer it, and then we have the numbers and we're done. And that may be true for just send out the other one the same way, and you guys can just rank your, whether that actually comes to the ending you want to, I don't know, but at least using the technology would go a lot faster than sending it all to Tracy and having them try to count them all.
so I still have the same two, thank you. I still have the same two questions. One is A, we need to do it in the next, 18 hours. And B, we have 100, I'm just making the number up, 125 more of these to do tomorrow. Are we going to do all of those? Rank all of those in the next 18 hours? Dan?
and then another question as far as ranking and the yes or no would be, at what level are we proposing to approve a grant amount? And that comes into, I like Shauna's idea about, we have a spreadsheet similar to, that it says, okay, we have 4 million, and I would be more open to not just say even voting. Well, at some point, of course, we're going to vote, but just to go, well, what if this one had 500,000? Can we play with this and see it on the screen? And what if we did 250 for this organization? What would that leave? And then we could say, once we got to some consensus, then vote from there. I would be comfortable with that, in concept, at least that's what I'm thinking now, because we don't have the amounts. And to me, that's real important, because, we have some say, asking for 1 million, but would their minimum request is 250,000. That's huge. And then there's another one that's 1.5 million. That's all, and they're sticking to that. So I don't mean to throw a monkey wrench in there, but I just, for clarification, what actually would we, what for the Survey Monkey, what would questions would be asking? Is it how much, or just
I think we
the
decide-
ranking of priorities?
I think we decide the funding, we discussed that. I don't think you can do that via Survey Monkey. I think it just adds too many variables. And so I think once we figure out our priorities, hopefully nothing's easy, but hopefully it would be a little bit easier if we see that all 6 of us are in support of, one thing, and they're asking for $750,000. I think we're going to see that money go really quickly. And it's just going to be a matter of, are we going to vote for how much they've actually requested? Or, are we not, are we going to do a minimum and then we'll have to have that discussion.
So Sean, I appreciate the thinking here. I keep going back to just like, I think we should do yes or no votes, and we will get very far. We will accomplish a lot of these same goals. And then, yes, we will have to go through things a second time. And if we want to use this kind of method, I'm very open to that. But I'm just thinking of the timing too. So again, we have to do all this by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. That's going to be a real challenge. However, if we just start yes or noing tomorrow is fine. Then our next meeting is not for 6 more days. Then we have a lot of time to sort. Then we have a lot of time to rank, to think about it, to look at dollar figures. But I can't imagine doing 150 rankings, and that's the number it would be, or more, 170.
I think you would just do your top 20 though.
But I have to go through all 150 applications and think which are my top 20. That's a lot of, I can do that, but I don't know if I can do that by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. In fact, it has to be well before 10 o'clock because somebody has to sort it out.
Veronica has had her hand up for a while.
I just don't understand how you're ready to vote yes and no before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning if you're not ready to rank these things before 10, or rank
That's
at
really-
least the top however many.
That's very easy for me to say because yes or no means it meets some criteria that I've got. I can't exactly define it, but whatever, we've all got our criteria. But ranking means I've decided that this project is better than that project. That takes a lot of thinking for me, and I have to do 100 of those. That's really hard. But yes or no, it just as the first sorting is pretty easy for me. I don't know if that answered your question, Ann.
I'm just wondering if we can get back, if it makes it more efficient to figure out one process for one tranche first. It's possible we might not use the same, and this kind of tries it out, like we figure out a procedure, 21 applications. I like the idea of like saying ranking them, and we're doing the yes or no. So it adds to that. It gives us more information. It helps us think it through.
The problem with that, Ann, is that means we are not going to finish anywhere near on our schedule, even close to it.
This doesn't, but this does not slow us down to do the rankings outside of here. And we have that information for the meeting tomorrow, and we're voting yes or no. So that I don't see that's slowing us down for this tranche.
Can you do 125 rankings by tomorrow morning?
I'm not doing 125, 21.
Okay, but then tomorrow, that means we would not be voting on the middle tranche because we haven't sorted it yet.
I just got those this morning, the middle tranche. I don't know if I won't be ready tomorrow. I haven't even looked at them as far as the rankings and looking at the applications, and if I would, to me, that means a lot, the scoring. So I was waiting for that before I delved into them. And so I'm not going to be ready tomorrow
You're not going to be ready to vote tomorrow.
for the second or other tranches. No, I just getting a lot of information. I mean, how many's in the second one? Was it 100 and?
Just for the record, for anyone listening, we
20?
did receive these a week ago, the entire list, maybe even a little more than a week ago. What we just received is MRB scoring. So I've sent several emails out asking everyone to do your homework, look through every application and decide whether you want it, yes, whether this works for you or not. So I just want to be clear to the public. I'm not asking anyone to vote on something that they've not had quite a bit of time to digest. I agree, there's some new information, but it's not most of the information. So I am planning on voting tomorrow. I don't know. I don't see how we cannot.
Can I respond to that?
Sure, of course.
I was going based on that we had in our program guidelines that we were going to go based on the scoring and then adjust it if needed. So I was waiting for that, and we just got that. And so if we're doing something different and we're not adjusting the scoring, but at least if the scoring is a good part of our decision-making, I'm going to go through I'd like to go through and rank the 21 in the highest tranche and get prepared. So do that and get prepared to do a yes or no vote on these tomorrow. And again, I have some other meetings today. I have 2 meetings this evening. That's all I am going to be able to squeeze in before our 10 o'clock meeting tomorrow. I won't be ready to vote on the other tranche that I haven't even looked at the scoring yet.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Yes, thank you. Just from outside and being involved with the process and the meetings, through the committee meetings, you guys set some guidelines for the scoring and put some procedures in place for MRB and everybody on the administration side to score these, and you put some trust in that. And then there's only certain categories of points that were objective for the legislators to have that discussion and make changes based on your priorities. I think one recommendation would be to go through the up and down as Dan is suggesting. And if they get the yes vote, then that's when we could have that discussion on the scoring and the questioning on where those priorities are and what can change for scoring. But that would be your ranking based on the score. Just ranking them, 1 through 21 doesn't take into consideration the scoring. And you guys agreed to this process, a couple months ago through committee and the scoring process. And that's what we've presented to you with only a little with those extra points as up for discussion. So to me, if you voted up and down, yes or no, and the ones that made the cut, then we could have that additional discussion on scoring and ranking based on those projects. And then that wouldn't slow it down as much as other options. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. So Shauna has suggested a different process. Haven't made a motion yet. Do we want to, do you want to formalize it? I can tell you, I'm not going to support it, but that shouldn't stop me.
I'm 6 of 1, half dozen of the other. I just want this to move forward. So
I will move that we do it, so I'm not sure who would do it. If it
on
would,
Survey Monkey?
who
Or
would
with
do
yes or
it?
No.
Pardon me?
Do it on the computer or do it and rank it or do it yes and no?
Well, we already voted on doing
Yes.
yes or no.
Yeah, that's right.
So I would move that in addition to the yes or no voting on the 21 applications in the highest tranche, so this is just for this tranche, that we also do a ranking before tomorrow's meeting. The members of the committee can do a ranking to help us help filter ones up to the top or bottom as an additional way to do that. I think it will, I'll get more information. I think it'll help me think about it more versus a yes. So it adds to that. So I think that'd be really helpful. Did you get them, or do you want me just to narrow down? The motion?
I got the motion that we're going to go ahead and rank them.
That
Is
I'd
that
like us,
in addition to the yes and no?
right.
It hasn't been defined as to who's actually going to collect the ranking information yet
Do we need that in the motion or?
to determine who's going to gather that information.
Okay, is there a second? Is that-
Sure. I guess I have a
Donna seconds.
question. Could it be counterintuitive? Because if we're voting yes or no, and then the numbers are all over the place for people ranking, I just don't know if it could be counterintuitive to each other.
Meaning we might not get meaningful information out of it? Is that what you're saying?
Meaning that we could have a majority of no's and then people could have ranked it within their top 10.
It gives us information, sorry.
Go ahead.
It gives us additional information. And
It gives us a starting point for tomorrow.
possibly, but I just feel like it gives us more information for I don't know how much work it's going to be for somebody. If we have somebody that can do the survey for us, I think it would take very little time on our part possibly, but it would help me to like think it through. And get ready for tomorrow, the yes or no vote. It would help inform me where my colleagues are, what their priorities are. And then it would help to me lessen the conversations like you want to, which I appreciate and I want to go, efficiently. It would help lessen those conversations because we have said through the Survey Monkey, what are our priorities for this group. So do you see what I'm saying? It gives us more information without taking a lot of committee time.
Other discussion?
I think introducing the ranking at this point in any form obliterates our scoring that's been done thus far to this point. It makes it a much more arbitrary process. And I'm comfortable with the scoring that the MRB group has done. I'm prepared for the first 24 or whatever the number is. I came in prepared for that. And if there's a less than unanimous vote on the funding, then I think that introduces the point to have a discussion.
Veronica.
I think the ranking, it would be helpful. I guess like Annie said, for the ranking would give some useful information about where we collectively are. And a way to communicate it without everyone have to say it out loud and take an extra hour or whatever. And if we're making our rankings based on MRB's scoring, then I don't think it obliterates the scoring. And if we're not, then we're obliterating the scoring anyway. So I don't really see that as a problem.
I will say, I mean, I think for me, MRB scoring is in the background and I'm not ignoring it. I think there are agencies that I might not have considered before, but since MRB ranked them up high, it makes me question and makes me think that, I need to investigate it more. And so I don't think the work that they've done is all in vain for us to say that we're ranking it based on our own ideas, so I want to make sure that that's put out there because I certainly, I'm looking at I did in fact print all of them and I apologize, but I have to have the paper and people can use my copies if they want. But, for me, it was important to see the application and, for me, it's good background to have the numbers that were presented by MRB.
Okay, we ready to vote on this proposed?
Okay, I have Shauna is making a second to Ann's motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. So this is a motion that we're going to be voting on. And a yes vote means that we are going to rank them. A no vote means we will not be ranking them. Any questions about what we're actually voting on?
It's ranking of all 24, regardless of
21.
or all 21, regardless of where the initial scoring has gone. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's as I understand it. Ann?
It's not, to me, it's not regardless. It's whatever you use, whatever you regard. If you are basing it just on the scoring, then you could rank them in order of MRB scoring. You could go and just take the 25 points. Some people have said that we kind of have to play with the alignment with priorities, the first column. So you could say, based on this, I would kind of, you go through and go, well, I wouldn't give that one 25. I might give them 15 to align with my priorities or our priorities. And so then you might rank that one. So you figure out your own ranking, just the same as when we do the yes or no. That's also where you come, what you consider for your yes or no. you consider the scoring or you don't consider the scoring, or you consider other factors. That does, neither one of those things throws out or weights the scoring more. If we were going to do something just on scoring, we would go, okay, we are only considering these here because they're the highest, and we're not going to consider,
Okay, shall we have a vote then? So the
Well,
yes,
can I just hear if that makes sense? Because he's asking a clarifying question, Lee.
It's quite an evolution from where we were a little while ago. I started down the road of prioritizing based on what we felt the community needs were along the lines of what Shauna suggested earlier. And then I also remember the conversation earlier that the scoring for a large number of these projects fell underneath certain totals that really put it away from a discussion. But now we're kind of throwing the whole tranche together and coming up with a set of rankings that really aren't going to relate well to where we're starting with the scores. It delegitimizes the work that we've done to this point.
Lisa, go ahead.
I guess that was a phrase I was thinking of as well. I just, in terms of the work done thus far in the committee's process and what MRB has brought forward as a system of ranking, does give you some standard information to say yes, no to. I just want to make sure in our offer to do a survey, it doesn't give you some additional results that may not be usable in the end. Because if we're saying to rank order all of them, it could negate some of this scoring that's already been done and has eliminated a number from consideration. So I guess my recommendation would be to react to the scoring that's already been in place and the work that's already been done based on the criteria that was agreed upon at the beginning of the process that reflects the legislature's priorities for the community. And I think there's enough room built into that to take into consideration different legislators' priorities in that.
Okay, I have a feeling we've had enough discussion on this, that everyone's made their points. Are we ready to vote? Okay, so as a reminder, yes vote means we're going to rank, and no vote means we're going to stick with the process we outlined earlier. So let us have a vote. Lee?
No.
Anne?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
I'm a no, but it needed 4 votes, so that fails. So we are now at the point where we're with the process we determined earlier. I just want to say again that we are going to need a second, assuming we go through our yeses, nos, we're going to need a second round to sort even further. And I'm open to that kind of process at that point. I think what we agreed on is going to be a first sorting, good first sorting. We still have to do the minutes.
Can I ask a question before you do the minutes?
Sure.
Just for clarification for me to get ready for tomorrow for the yes or no vote on, so we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to, I'm thinking, because at the minutes, does that mean we're going to end after that? So.
We don't have to, we can keep going, but I just want to make sure we get that in. That's
Okay,
our
then
last
go
bit of
ahead and do the
business.
minutes and I'll ask something else if you want to do that.
Go ahead, and you started on it already, go.
So for tomorrow, for the yes or no votes, and so what is that yes or no vote going to mean? Like, what is that going to, I guess I don't know what's going to happen after that. And yeah.
So, this is how I view it, and it could be interpreted slightly differently. So people should speak up if they think differently, but this is how I view it. Yes, the yes pile means that it's still in the running. We're going to have to sort more later on.
Yes, with 4 votes, you're
Correct.
saying?
That's correct. The majority of the
Okay.
committee, because it's likely, we're going to exceed the $6.5 million. So yes vote keeps it in the running. No vote eliminates it from the running. And then remember, there's some other piles. There's the seeker pile. I still have some questions that I don't want to take floor time to answer. There's I want to consider this for a partial, that's going to require more discussion. So we're going to sort it into categories, but mostly it's yeses and nos. Yeses continue to be in the running, nos are eliminated.
So yes, with 4 votes tomorrow, keeps it in the running for consideration. And I just want to also add, like, I've heard, like someone say that, well, I don't know, for instance, possibly Cuba International. I know the organization. I'd be glad to talk to people about that one, if that's, if people are, if familiarity with these organizations is an issue. But I think we should take them personally, I don't think that should be an issue. I think it should be, we base it on the scoring and the work that MRB has done. So something ranking high and we don't know them, I don't think that should be a consideration myself.
Hey, we have to vote on the minutes of last time. So will somebody move that? Shauna moves. Veronica seconds. Any discussion about the minutes? Okay, all in favor of the minutes? That's unanimous. Thank you. I want to say something. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to say this right. So I'm sorry that this was a very unwieldy meeting. And I'm sorry that to the extent that I contributed to it with my determination, I certainly did not mean to intimidate anybody. I do feel the weight of the community that's watching this and wanting us to make these decisions. I feel the weight of the full legislature who is asking us to do this. I feel the weight of the calendar. I feel the weight of that we are inventing this from scratch, and so that we don't have a lot of tradition to fall back on. So I just wanted to, express a little bit where I'm coming from, and I do apologize if people were. I apologize if I was too forceful. Any other business before the committee today? Ann?
So wasn't really paying attention to the time. So since we do have some time, do we want to talk about what are the possible next steps with the other tranches, or do we want to get this one under our belt and talk about it tomorrow?
My response is that I think we're done today, and that it's going to, working through with the yes or no votes is going to tell us a lot of information, and it's going to reveal a lot about, hopefully, about how we should proceed after that. So I feel like we should go for the first step before we figure out what the second step is. That's my opinion. I'm open to other thoughts.
I just want to say I'm good, since, as I said, I would have preferred that we, went through, and if we wanted to change the scoring, and possibly that'll be part of, the next step after that, if we want to consider the changing the scoring. But since we haven't done that, I'm going to base most of my consideration on the scoring. As has been said, MRB did I trust them that they, did this as objective as they could. So that's how I'll be probably basing most of my votes tomorrow.
Dan, do you anticipate that we will go down the whole list, or we will go to the point where we've met the amount allocated for the first tranche?
My opinion, we need to go through the whole list, get it to a smaller list. And again, that'll tell us a lot. Maybe we will get down close to the dollar amount and we can, we can easily whittle off the rest. Or maybe it won't. Maybe we're not going to be very successful at saying no. That remains to be seen, right? We're not very good at saying no. In which case, we do have to move to some other kind of method because.
So 4 yeses or 4 nos?
Yeah. And I'm going to repeat what I started by saying today. I encourage you to be as no-centric as possible. We have to eliminate 80% of these. And
This procedure tomorrow, are we going, do we want to think about, do we want to start with the top ones ranked or the bottom ones as we're voting tomorrow?
very interesting question. Anybody have a thought about that?
I think you go by the scoring that we've been presented.
Top to bottom or bottom?
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom. I mean, I'd be fine with that. Any other thoughts for the day?
Just wondering if MRB has any other comments or on how the process is going? Because I had looked towards them for advice.
I suspect they'll be discussing that over martinis at lunch. I would. Sorry, MRB.
I will just say that I'm going to update the scoring sheets to include some indication around the minimums for the blank boxes, and I'll resend that out to you for so that you have those indications as you're reviewing tonight.
I'll also mention that everyone should have on their desks, I think, the printout of the middle tranche. So we have both a paper version and an electronic version.
Just wondering if Tracy has a time frame that might go out, just an estimate?
The top tranche I can do in the next 20 minutes. That one will be easy because there's only 3 of them. The middle tranche I'll go through and try to get that out by 3:30. I don't think there should be too many in there, but.
Thank you.
Lee.
Remind me how many are in the middle versus the last tranche?
Tracy, are you able to add that up easily, or I mean?
Yep, I do. Let me just open that file here. The middle bucket has 120. And then the small bucket has 70. So the middle bucket is by far the largest.
I'm just wondering, in the interest of continuing to move along, would we take that third smaller amount tranche and move it ahead of the middle one? And then that would give you time for the larger number to.
It's not ready yet.
It's not ready. Okay. Disregard. Thank you.
It's a good idea, but it's just. Other thoughts for the day? Going once, going twice. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
We have budget committee at 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.